in the cold, snowy forests of Alaska, far away from busy cities and curious eyes, stood a hidden research facility. The building looked plain from the outside, like any other scientific station, but inside its thick walls, something unusual was happening. A young female wolf named Emma lived there, but she was no ordinary wolf. She had bright, intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than any animal should. She could think clearly, remember details, and feel emotions as deeply as any person. The scientists at the facility claimed they were studying animal intelligence for the good of science. They said their work would help people understand nature better, but their methods were strict and often painful. Emma spent her days in a strong metal cage with thick bars and bright lights that never turned off completely. She was given food on time, but she received little kindness. The researchers poked and tested her, wrote notes about her reactions, and sometimes used loud noises or strange tools that frightened her. They wanted to see how much she could learn and how she behaved under pressure. Emma hated the cage. She missed the feeling of soft earth under her paws and the fresh smell of pine trees after rain. At night, when the facility grew quiet, she would press her nose against the cold bars and look out the small window. She dreamed of running freely through the snow, chasing the wind and feeling the moonlight on her fur. Sometimes she howled softly, a long, lonely sound that echoed through the empty halls. The guards had gotten used to her howls and no longer paid much attention. One winter the snow fell heavier than usual. Blizzards covered the roads and made travel almost impossible. That was when a young biologist named Ryan Carter arrived in the area. Ryan was 28 years old with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. He had come to Alaska alone to study how climate change was affecting the local wildlife. He traveled by snowmobile and carried a small tent, cameras, and notebooks. Ryan loved nature and believed every living creature deserved respect and protection. On his third night in the wilderness, Ryan set up camp near a frozen river. The wind howled outside his tent, and the temperature dropped so low that his breath turned to ice crystals in the air. He was warming his hands by a small portable heater when he heard it, a deep, sorrowful howl that cut through the storm. It sounded different from any wolf call he had ever heard. There was pain in it and something else, almost like a cry for help. Ryan sat still and listened. The howl came again, longer, this time full of loneliness. His heart tightened. He knew he should stay safe inside his tent, but he could not ignore the sound. Something told him this was not a normal animal in trouble. He pulled on his heavy coat, grabbed the flashlight and his emergency kit, and stepped out into the blowing snow. The storm made it hard to see more than a few feet ahead. Ryan followed the direction of the howls, walking carefully over hidden rocks and deep snow drifts. After nearly an hour of struggling through the wind, he saw faint lights glowing through the trees. A building stood there, half hidden by snow-covered pines. It did not look like a normal research station. Tall fences surrounded it, and security cameras turned slowly on their poles. Curious and worried, Ryan moved closer, staying low behind the trees. He watched as two guards walked past the main gate, their breaths visible in the cold air. When they disappeared around the corner, Ryan crept nearer to the fence. That was when he heard the howl again, much closer. Now it came from inside the building. Ryan's curiosity turned into concern. He knew it was risky, but he could not leave without checking, using the skills he had learned during his years of field work. He found a weak spot in the fence and carefully cut through the wire. With a small tool from his kit, he slipped inside the compound and moved quietly toward the back of the building. A side door had been left unlocked by mistake. In the hurry of the storm, Ryan took a deep breath and stepped inside. The hallway was dimly lit and smelled of cleaning chemicals. Ryan moved silently, listening for any voices. He passed several locked rooms before he reached a large laboratory area. Through a glass window, he saw rows of cages. Most were empty, but in the far corner stood a bigger enclosure with thick bars. Inside it, a beautiful gray wolf with silver highlights in her fur paced restlessly. Her eyes shone with intelligence and sadness. Ryan's breath caught. He had seen many wolves in the wild, but this one looked different. She seemed aware of everything around her. When she noticed him standing at the window, she stopped pacing and stared straight at him. For a moment their eyes met, and Ryan felt a strange connection, as if she was asking him for help. He knew he should turn around and leave. Breaking into a private facility was illegal, and he could lose his job or even go to jail, but the wolf's eyes held him in place. She looked tired and hopeless. Ryan whispered to himself, I can't just walk away. He checked the hallway again to make sure no one was coming, then entered the lab. The wolf watched him closely, but did not growl or show fear. Ryan found the control panel for the cage, and after a few tense moments, figured out how to open the door. The lock clicked softly and the cage door swung open. Emma stepped forward slowly. She sniffed the air around Ryan and tilted her head. He knelt down to her level and spoke in a calm, gentle voice. Hey there, girl, you don't belong in here. Let's get you out. He offered it hand carefully. Emma hesitated for only a second before touching her nose to his palm. Ryan smiled softly. He took off his scarf and wrapped it loosely around her neck for extra warmth. Then he led her toward the side door, moving as quietly as possible. Outside, the blizzard had grown even stronger. Snow whipped against their faces and the wind pushed them sideways. Ryan knew they had to move fast before the guards noticed the open cage. He guided Emma through the hole in the fence and into the deep forest. The snow reached almost to his knees, making every step difficult. Emma stayed close to him, sometimes pushing her body against his leg to help him keep balance. They walked for hours through the freezing night. Ryan talked to her the whole time to keep himself calm and to comfort her. You're going to be okay, he said softly. There's a safe place not too far from here, a protected forest where no one will hurt you. Just keep going with me. Emma listened to his voice, even though she could not speak in words. Yet she understood the kindness in his tone. For the first time in years, she felt hope. When they finally reached the edge of a large nature reserve, the storm began to calm a little. Tall trees stood like silent guardians, and the snow glowed softly under the moonlight. Ryan stopped and turned to Emma. This is as far as I can take you, he said, breathing hard from the long journey. You're free now. Run, find a safe home. Live the life you deserve. He knelt down one last time and gently stroked the top of her head. Emma looked into his eyes for a long moment, as if she wanted to remember every detail of his face. Then she turned and disappeared into the shadows of the trees. Her gray fur blending perfectly with the winter landscape. Ryan stood there for a while, watching the spot where she had vanished. His heart felt heavy and light at the same time. He had broken many rules that night, but he knew in his soul that he had done the right thing. He turned back toward his camp, already planning to send an anonymous message to the authorities about the facility. Little did he know that Emma would never forget him. In the quiet of the protected forest, as she rested under the stars, she carried his voice and his kindness deep inside her heart, and somewhere in the future their paths would cross again in a way that would surprise the entire world. 3 years had passed since that stormy night in Alaska. Ryan Carter had returned to his quiet life in a small town in Oregon called Maple Ridge. He worked as a wildlife consultant, helping local parks and schools understand how to protect animals in their homes. People liked Ryan because he was patient and kind. He spoke softly, listened carefully, and always had time to answer questions from children who dreamed of becoming scientists one day. But Ryan never told anyone about the wolf he had rescued. He kept the memory locked safely inside his heart. Sometimes late at night he would sit on his porch and look at the stars. He wondered if she had found a good home in the wild. Had she stayed safe? Did she remember the man who had carried her through the snow? He hoped she was happy and free, running under the moonlight with the wind in her fur. Ryan tried to move on with his life, but a small part of him always felt that something important had happened that night, something bigger than he could explain. Meanwhile, deep in the protective forests and mountains, Emma had begun to change. At first the changes were small and slow. After Ryan left her at the edge of the reserve, she found a quiet den under a fallen tree. She rested there for many days, healing from the long journey and the years spent in the cage. The fresh air, clean water, and freedom to move filled her with new strength. But something inside her mind had awakened because of the time she had spent with humans. The tests at the facility, though painful, had opened doors in her thoughts that most animals never knew existed. Emma started to notice things differently. She could remember faces, voices, and even the exact words Ryan had spoken to her. "You're free now, run." Those simple words played in her mind like a gentle song. She began to understand the sounds of the forest in new ways, the rustle of leaves, the call of birds, and the distant rumble of thunder, all carried meanings she had never noticed before. As the seasons changed from winter to spring, then to summer, Emma explored farther and farther. She watched deer move through the meadows and birds build their nests, but most of all she watched the few humans who sometimes hiked through the edges of the reserve. She stayed hidden in the trees, studying how they walked, how they talked to each other, and how they used their hands to carry things. Something inside her wanted to be more like them, not to leave the wild behind, but to understand the world the way Ryan had understood her. One warm summer evening, while drinking from a clear stream, Emma felt a strange warmth spread through her body. Her legs tingled and her thoughts grew sharper. When she looked down at her reflection in the water, she saw something that surprised her. Her body began to shift slowly. Her front legs lengthened and changed shape until they looked more like arms. She stood up on her back legs, wobbly at first but steady after a few tries. Her fur softened and shortened in some places. and her face took on gentler lines. By morning, she looked almost like a young human woman, tall and graceful, with long dark hair that carried hints of silver gray and eyes that still shone with the wild intelligence of the forest. At first, Emma felt scared of her new form. She stumbled when she tried to walk on two legs. Her hands felt strange and useful at the same time. She practiced for weeks, learning to balance, to pick up sticks, and to make simple sounds with her mouth. Words came slowly. She remembered the voices from the facility and the gentle tone Ryan had used. She practiced saying simple things out loud when no one was near. Free, she whispered one day, tasting the word on her tongue. Run. Safe, kind. Each new word brought her joy. She began to make clothes from soft bark and leaves woven together. Then, later, from old blankets she found left behind by hikers. She stayed away from people living quietly in the deeper parts of the forest. She ate berries, fish from the streams, and roots she dug from the earth. But her mind grew hungry for more knowledge. She wanted to understand why humans built cities, why they studied animals, and why one of them had risked so much to help her. Emma started to travel secretly toward towns. She moved only at night or early morning, staying in the shadows of trees. She listened to conversations from a distance, watched children playing in parks, and saw families laughing together. These moments made her heart ache with a mix of happiness and sadness. She wondered if she would ever have a place in that world. Back in Maple Ridge, Ryan continued his quiet routine. He taught a class at the local nature center every Saturday morning. Children loved his stories about wolves, bears, and eagles. He showed them pictures he had taken during his travels and explained how important it was to protect wild places. One Saturday, a little girl named Lily asked him a question that made him pause. "Mr. Carter, have you ever saved an animal that was really scared?" Ron smiled gently, but his eyes grew thoughtful. "Yes, Lily. I once helped a wolf who needed freedom more than anything. I hope she is happy now." He did not say more, but the memory warmed him. As time went on, scientists around the world began to notice unusual reports from forests in North America. Hikers and rangers spoke of a mysterious woman who appeared briefly at the edges of trails. She moved with unusual grace and seemed to understand animals in a special way. Some said she could call birds to her hand or calm a nervous deer with just a look. These stories spread quietly at first, then reached universities and research centers. Large conference was planned in the city of Seattle. It was called the Global Gathering on Interspecies Intelligence. Experts from many countries would come to share new discoveries about how smart some animals could be. There would be talks about dolphins, elephants, crows, and even wolves. No one expected a real surprise guest. Emma had heard about the conference while listening to campers talk near her forest home. She felt a pull inside her heart. This might be her chance to speak about her own life and to find the one person who had changed everything for her. She practiced her words every day, standing by a quiet lake and speaking clearly to the trees. "I was held, I was hurt, but one human helped me. His name is Ryan Carter." She wanted to say thank you in a way the whole world could hear. The day of the conference arrived. The big auditorium in Seattle was filled with hundreds of people, scientists in neat coats, Reporters with cameras, government, officials and curious students. The air buzzed with excitement. Speakers talked about new studies showing that many animals had feelings, memories, and even problem-solving skills that surprised everyone. Then the host stepped onto the stage with a serious but hopeful look. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest today. She has traveled a long way to share her story. Please welcome Emma. The lights dimmed slightly, the side door opened and Emma walked onto the stage. She wore a simple, elegant dark dress that reached her ankles. Her long dark hair with silver highlights fell softly over her shoulders. She moved with quiet confidence, her bare feet silent on the cool floor. Her silver-gray eyes scanned the room calmly. A surprised murmur spread through the audience. Who was this woman? Why did she look both familiar and strangely wild at the same time? Emma stood at the microphone and took a slow, steady breath. Her voice came out clear and gentle, carrying a soft, natural warmth that made everyone lean forward to listen. My name is Emma, she began. For many years I lived in a place where I was not free. I was studied and kept behind bars, but one cold night, a kind human found me. He opened the door and walked with me through the storm. He gave me the greatest gift, my freedom. The room grew quieter. Cameras clicked softly. Emma continued, her words simple yet powerful. I have changed since that night. I have learned to walk and speak as you do. I have come here today because I finally found the man who rescued me. I want the world to know what one act of kindness can do. Her silver-gray eyes moved slowly across the rows of seats. They stopped when they reached a man sitting near the back. Ryan Carter sat frozen in his chair, his face pale with shock. He had come to the conference only because his work had invited him. He never expected this. Emma stepped down from the stage and began walking slowly down the center aisle. The entire auditorium held its breath. People whispered in surprise, but no one dared to speak loudly. Security guards moved forward but stopped when they saw the calm, determined look on her face. She walked straight toward Ryan. When she reached him, she stopped just a few steps away. Her eyes shone with unshed tears of gratitude. You are the one, she said softly yet loud enough for the microphones to carry her words to every corner of the room. You carried me when I could not walk. You spoke gentle words in the dark. You risked everything so I could be free. Ryan stood up slowly. His hands trembled slightly as he looked at the woman who had once been the wolf in the snow. He could hardly believe what he was seeing. I thought you would never remember me, he whispered. Emma smiled, a small, beautiful smile that lit up her entire face. I remember everything, she replied. The whole room fell into a deep, stunned silence. No one moved, no one spoke. In that quiet moment, something magical seemed to fill the air. A simple rescue from years ago had grown into a story that touched every heart present. The silence in the large auditorium felt almost alive. Hundreds of people sat completely still, their eyes fixed on the woman with silver-gray eyes and the man standing before her. No one coughed, no one whispered, even the cameras seemed to pause their constant clicking. It was as if the whole world inside that room had stopped breathing. For a moment, Emma stood only a few steps away from Ryan Carter. Her simple, dark dress moved gently as she took one small step closer. She looked at him with a warmth that came from deep inside Her heart, the same heart that had once beaten with fear behind cold metal bars. Ryan's face showed complete surprise. His kind brown eyes were wide and his hands hung loosely at his sides as if he had forgotten how to move them. "You," Emma said again, her voice soft but strong enough for the microphones to carry every word clearly across the hall. "You are the human who opened the cage. You walked with me through the deep snow when the wind tried to push us down. You spoke gentle words that gave me hope. I have carried your voice with me every single day since that night." Ryan swallowed hard, his throat felt tight with emotion. He had spent 3 years convincing himself that the rescue was a secret moment that only he and the forest would remember. Now here she was, standing in front of him like a living miracle, speaking in clear, beautiful sentences. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words came out quiet and shaky. "At first, I never thought I would see you again," he said. "I only did what felt right. You looked so sad in that cage. I could not leave you there." A gentle smile touched Emma's lips. It was not a big smile, but it carried years of quiet thanks. She reached out slowly and took one of his hands in both of hers. Her touch was warm and steady, like the earth after a gentle rain. Ryan did not pull away. Instead, he looked down at their joined hands and felt a wave of peace wash over him. The audience began to stir just a little. A few people wiped tears from their eyes without making a sound. Young scientist in the front row leaned forward, her notebook forgotten in her lap. An older professor with white hair sat with his mouth slightly open, as if all his years of study had not prepared him for this single moment. Emma turned slightly so she could speak to both Ryan and the entire room. Her silver gray eyes shone under the bright lights. "For many years I lived behind bars," she told them. "The people there said they were learning about animals, but they forgot that I could feel fear, loneliness, and hope just like you. They tested me with bright lights and loud sounds. They wrote numbers in their books while I dreamed of trees and open sky. Then one night when the snow fell hard and the wind sang its cold song, Ryan came. He did not know me. He did not have to help, but he opened the door anyway. He guided me through the storm. He said, 'You are free now. Run.'" Those words became my light in the dark. She paused and looked back at Ryan. "Because of you, I learned to walk on 2 legs. Because of you, I learned to shape words with my mouth. Because of you, I stand here today, not as someone who has studied, but as someone who chooses to speak." Ryan's eyes grew misty. He squeezed her hands gently and found his voice again. "I was just a biologist doing field work," he said humbly. "I heard your howl through the blizzard. It sounded so full of pain. I followed it. Because every living creature deserves a chance to be free. I never imagined you would change like this. I never imagined you would find me." A soft ripple of emotion moved through the crowd. Someone in the middle rows began to clap slowly at first. Then more people joined in. Applause grew warmer and louder until it filled the auditorium like gentle waves. But Emma raised her free hand calmly, and the clapping faded back into respectful silence. "Please," she said kindly, "I did not come here for applause. I came to say thank you, and I came to share a simple truth. Kindness can cross any line that people draw between us. It can reach from one heart to another, even when one heart beats inside fur and the other inside skin. Ryan showed me that truth on the coldest night of my life." She turned fully toward the audience now, still holding Ryan's hand as if it gave her strength. I have spent these past years learning your world in secret, she continued. I watched families laugh together. I saw children run and play without fear. I listened to stories told around campfires, and I wondered why some humans build cages while others open doors. Today I want to speak for all the voices that still cannot speak in your language, the wolves, the bears, the birds, and the quiet creatures of the forests and oceans. They feel, they remember, they dream of freedom too. Her words were simple, but they touched something deep inside every listener. Reporter in the press section stopped typing and simply stared, her eyes bright with unshed tears. A government official who had come to the conference expecting ordinary science talks now sat completely still, thinking about his own children and the world they would inherit. Ryan looked at Emma with quiet admiration. You have grown so much, he said softly, almost only for her ears. I am proud of you. Emma's smile grew a little brighter. I wanted to find you to tell you that your one brave choice changed everything. It gave me a new life, and now I hope it can help change how people see the wild ones. The host of the conference, a tall woman with short gray hair, stepped forward carefully from the side of the stage. She looked moved but professional. Emma, she said respectfully, and Ryan, this is truly remarkable. Would you be willing to answer a few questions? From the audience, everyone here is deeply touched by your story. Emma nodded calmly. I will try. My words are still new, but my heart is full. Ryan gave a small, nervous laugh. I am not used to speaking in front of so many people, but for this, I will do my best. The first question came from a young student near the front. She stood up with shaky hands. Emma, how did you learn to speak like us? Was it difficult? Emma thought for a moment, choosing her words with care. It was slow, like learning to walk on new legs. She answered honestly. At first sounds felt strange in my mouth, but I remembered Ryan's gentle voice in the storm. I practiced by the quiet lakes and under the tall trees. Every new word felt like finding a bright stone on the forest floor. It took time and patience, but freedom gave me the space to learn. Another question came from a scientist in the middle rows. Ryan, when you decided to help Emma that night, did you know you were breaking rules? Were you afraid? Ryan rubbed the back of his neck thoughtfully. Yes, I knew it was risky. I could have lost my job or faced trouble with the law. But when I looked into her eyes through that glass, I saw someone who needed help. Fear was there, but kindness felt stronger. Sometimes doing the right thing means taking a step into the unknown. The questions continued, each one gentle and curious. Emma answered with honesty and grace. She spoke about the beauty of the forest. After her rescue, the way sunlight danced on green leaves, and how the first spring flowers smelled sweet after winter. She described the joy of running freely again, even as her body began to change. Ryan added stories from his work, explaining how small acts of care for animals could make a big difference in the world. As the conversation flowed, the audience grew more engaged. People nodded along, some wrote notes quickly, others simply listened with open hearts. The story of one rescue stormy Alaskan night had become something much larger, a bridge between two worlds. Emma glanced at Ryan again, her silver gray eyes full of quiet joy. Thank you for being here, she whispered to him between questions. Thank you for saying yes to helping a stranger in the snow, Ryan smiled back. At her, his earlier shock now replaced by a deep sense of wonder. I am the one who should thank you, he replied. Softly, you turned one small choice into something beautiful. The afternoon light outside the windows began to soften as the conference continued. No one wanted to leave the connection between Emma and Ryan and the message they shared held everyone in place. It was clear that this day would be remembered for a very long time. Yet, even as the questions went on, a new feeling grew in the room. This meeting was only the beginning. The world outside the auditorium was about to hear their story, and nothing would stay quite the same again. The questions in the auditorium continued for nearly an hour, but the energy in the room never faded. People sat forward in their seats, listening closely as Emma and Ryan answered each one with honesty and care. Emma's voice stayed calm and clear, like a gentle stream flowing through the forest. Ryan spoke with quiet humility, often looking at Emma as if he still could not believe she was standing beside him. One young reporter raised her hand and asked, Emma, what do you want people to understand most about your journey? Emma thought for a moment, her silver-gray eyes shining. With quiet strength, she held Ryan's hand a little tighter as she answered, I want people to remember that every living being has feelings, she said. Simply, we all feel joy when the sun warms our skin or our fur. We all feel sadness when we are kept away from the things we love. Ryan showed me kindness when no one else did. That one choice taught me that hearts can speak to each other, even when words are new or bodies are different. I hope more humans choose kindness instead of cages. Her words settled over the audience like soft morning light. Many people nodded. Slowly, a few wiped their eyes again. The host stood nearby, giving them space, but clearly moved by the moment. Another question came from an older gentleman in the back. Ryan, how has this changed your view of your own work with wildlife? Ryan smiled gently and looked out at the crowd. It has made me more careful with every decision, he replied. I used to think my job was just collecting data and writing reports. Now, I see that every animal has its own story. Emma reminded me that protecting nature is not only about rules and science, it is also about listening with our hearts. I am grateful she found the courage to speak today. As the question slowed, the host stepped forward with a warm smile. Thank you both, she said. This has been one of the most meaningful moments in the history of this conference. Before we close this session, would you like to say anything more to everyone here? She turned to face the entire auditorium, still standing close to Ryan. I'm not here to make anyone feel ashamed, she said. Kindly, I am here to invite you to see the world with new eyes. The forests, the mountains, and the oceans are full of life that deserves respect. Let us build a future where no one needs to break rules in secret to do what is right. Let us choose open doors instead of locked cages. Ryan added softly, and if one person can make a difference by helping just one life, imagine what all of us together could do. The room filled with warm applause once more. This time it lasted longer, rising like a wave of genuine appreciation. When it finally quieted, the host invited everyone to take a short break. People stood up slowly, talking excitedly in small groups. Many wanted to approach Emma and Ryan, but security gently guided the crowd to give them Some space outside the auditorium, news of the event spread quickly. Reporters sent messages and photos to their offices, social media filled with short videos and comments from people who had watched the live stream. Words like miracle, inspiring, and unforgettable appeared again and again. Scientists debated what Emma's existence might mean for their studies. Ordinary families talked about the story at dinner tables that evening. Emma and Ryan were given a quiet room backstage to rest for a few minutes. A kind assistant brought them water and simple fruit. They sat across from each other at a small table for the first time since their reunion. They had a moment alone. Ryan looked at her with gentle wonder. "How did you find me?" he asked. Emma smiled and took a slow sip of water. "I listened to many stories in the forest," she explained. "I heard campers talk about wildlife experts in Oregon. I saw your name once in an old newspaper left behind on a trail. It mentioned your work with wolves. My heart knew it was you, so I traveled carefully, staying hidden until I reached this city. I asked to speak at the conference because I hoped you might be here, and you were." Ryan shook his head in amazement. "You are incredibly brave, Emma. Most people would never have taken such a risk." "I learned bravery from you," she replied softly. "You walked into the storm for someone you did not know. I only walked into a room full of lights and voices." They talked quietly about the years that had passed. Ryan told her about his peaceful life in Maple Ridge, teaching children, walking forest trails, and planting trees to help the environment. Emma shared stories of her first steps on two legs, the joy of tasting fresh berries, and the peace she felt sleeping under open stars. Their conversation flowed easily, like old friends catching up after a long time apart. After the break, the conference continued with new energy. The organizers asked Emma and Ryan to join a special panel discussion. They sat on stage with 3 other experts. The room was even more crowded now, as word had spread and additional people had hurried to join. During the panel, Emma spoke about her hopes for the future. "I dream of places where wild ones and humans can share the earth with respect," she said. "Maybe one day we can have safe forests where no cages exist. Maybe children can learn from animals instead of only studying them in books." Ryan supported her ideas with practical thoughts. "We can start small," he suggested, "by teaching kindness in schools, by making stronger laws to protect wildlife, and by listening to stories like Emma's. Change begins when we open our hearts." The discussion stayed lively and hopeful. No one argued harshly. Instead, ideas flowed with curiosity and goodwill. By the end of the afternoon, many attendees felt inspired to take action in their own communities. As the day drew to a close, the host thanked everyone and announced that Emma and Ryan would be available for a few short interviews outside. The sun was setting when they stepped out of the building. Golden light touched the city streets, and a soft breeze carried the distant smell of the sea. A small group of reporters waited respectfully. Emma answered their questions with the same gentle honesty she had shown inside. Ryan stood beside her, offering support when needed. One reporter asked, "What happens next for both of you?" Emma looked at Ryan before answering, "I would like to learn more about the world, but I also want to return to the quiet places I love. Ryan has shown me that one life can touch many. I hope to keep sharing that message in my own way. Ryan added, I plan to go back to my work in Oregon, but with new purpose. Emma has reminded me why I fell in love with nature in the first place. As the interviews ended, the crowd began to thin. Emma and Ryan walked slowly along a quiet path near the conference center. Tall trees lined the walkway, reminding Emma of her forest home. Thank you for standing with me today, she said. Ryan smiled warmly. Thank you for finding me. You have given my simple actions a meaning I never expected. They stopped under a large oak tree. Emma looked up at the leaves moving gently in the breeze. Will you visit the forest again someday, she asked. I would like that very much, Ryan replied. Maybe we can walk together where the snow once fell. Emma nodded, her silver-gray eyes peaceful. That would make my heart happy. The evening sky turned soft shades of pink and orange. For the first time in years, both of them felt a deep sense of belonging, not just to their own worlds, but to something larger that connected them. The story that began on a stormy Alaskan night had now reached hundreds of hearts in one day, yet deep down they both sensed that the most important chapters were still to come. News crews packed up their equipment while the city lights began to glow. Emma and Ryan stood quietly for a moment longer, two lives brought together by kindness, now walking forward into an unknown but hopeful future. The days after the conference in Seattle felt like the beginning of a new season. New of Emma and Ryan spread across the country and even beyond. Television channels showed clips of Emma standing calmly in the auditorium, her silver gray eyes full of quiet strength. Newspapers printed her simple, honest words on their front pages. Families talked about the story at breakfast tables, and teachers used it in classrooms to discuss kindness and respect for nature. People who had never thought much about wildlife now paused to wonder about the lives of animals around them. Emma and Ryan stayed in Seattle for a few more days to rest and talk with a small group of kind scientists who promised to help protect wild spaces. They did not seek attention, but the world seemed eager to hear more, yet both of them preferred quiet moments. In the evenings they walked along peaceful paths near the water, sharing stories and enjoying the soft sound of waves. One morning Ryan suggested something simple. Would you like to come back to Maple Ridge with me for a while, he asked gently. It is a small, quiet town with forests close by. You could see my home and the places where I work. No cameras, no big crowds. Just peace and fresh air. Emma's face lit up with a warm smile. I would like that very much, she replied. My heart misses the trees and the quiet earth. They traveled together by train, choosing seats near the window so Emma could watch the changing landscapes. She pressed her hand lightly against the glass as forests, mountains, and rivers passed by. Ryan sat beside her, answering her questions about the towns they saw and the people who lived there. Their conversation flowed easily, full of gentle laughter and thoughtful pauses. By the time they reached Maple Ridge, Emma felt more at home than she had in a long time. Maple Ridge was a charming, small town nestled between green hills and tall pine forests. Ryan's house was a cozy wooden home with a wide porch that looked out over a meadow. When they arrived, the late afternoon sun painted everything in golden light. The air smelled of pine needles and fresh grass. This feels like freedom, she said softly. Ryan smiled and showed her around. He had a small garden where he grew vegetables and flowers. There was a comfortable guest room with soft blankets and a window that opened to the trees. Emma chose to spend her first night sleeping with the window wide open, listening to the night sounds she loved so much. The next morning they walked into the nearby forest together. Ryan carried a small backpack with water and snacks. Emma walked barefoot on the soft path, her steps light and sure. Birds sang overhead and squirrels chattered from the branches. At one point, a gentle deer stepped out from the trees and looked at them calmly. Before continuing on its way, Emma stopped by a clear stream and knelt down to touch the cool water. "This is where I belong," she whispered, "but now I also belong to the world of words and kind hearts." Ryan sat on a nearby rock and watched her with quiet joy. "You have changed so much since that snowy night," he said. "Yet you still carry the spirit of the wild inside you. It is a beautiful thing to see." They spent many days like this, walking, talking, and simply being. Ryan introduced Emma to a few trusted friends in town, including an older woman named Clara, who ran the local nature center. Clara welcomed Emma with open arms and never asked too many questions. She simply offered warm tea and stories about the forest. One afternoon, while they sat on Ryan's porch watching the sunset, Emma turned to him with serious but hopeful eyes. "I have been thinking about what comes next," she said. "I do not want to hide forever, but I also do not want to live under bright lights and constant watching. I want to help in my own way, perhaps by teaching children about respect for animals or by sharing stories from the forest. Would you help me find a gentle path?" Ryan nodded without hesitation. "Of course we can. Start small, maybe short talks at the nature center or quiet visits to schools. Nothing that makes you feel trapped again. Your voice should be heard only when you choose to share it." Emma reached out and placed her hand over his. "Thank you, Ryan. You gave me freedom once. Now you help me use it wisely." As weeks passed, their friendship grew deeper. They planted trees together in a local park, helped rescue an injured bird that had fallen from its nest, and spent evenings reading books by the fireplace. Ryan taught Emma more about human ways, while she taught him to listen to the forest with new ears. He learned to notice the small signs of life he had sometimes missed before, the way leaves turned in the wind, or how animals moved when they felt safe. The story of their meeting continued to inspire people far away. Letters arrived at the nature center from children who wanted to protect animals. Schools invited them for gentle visits. Emma spoke carefully during these times, always keeping her words simple and full of hope. She never complained about her past. Instead, she focused on the future and the possibility of a kinder world. One crisp autumn day, Ryan and Emma returned to the forest where their journey had truly begun. Not Alaska, but a protected area near Maple Ridge that felt like home. They walked along a familiar trail until they reached a quiet clearing. Golden leaves covered the ground and the air felt fresh and alive. Ryan stopped and turned to her. "Emma, meeting you changed my life in ways I never expected," he said. "I thought I was only doing one small good thing that night, but you have shown me that kindness can grow into something much larger. I am grateful every day that our paths crossed." Emma looked at him with those clear silver gray eyes that still held the wild wisdom of the woods, and I am grateful you listened to my howl through the storm," she replied. "You did not see just an animal, you saw someone who needed help. Because of you I learned that hearts can understand each other across any difference. Now I want to carry that understanding forward." They stood together in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the wind move through the trees. Then Emma spoke again, her voice soft but certain. "I have decided to stay near this town for now," she said. "I will live simply close to the forest and share what I can when the time feels right, and I hope you will continue to walk beside me as a friend." Ryan smiled warmly. "Nothing would make me happier." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks, they started walking back along the trail. Birds flew overhead and a gentle breeze carried the scent of pine. Their steps matched each other naturally. Two different lives now, connected by a single act of courage and compassion. Back in town, life continued with a new sense of purpose. Ryan returned to his work with renewed energy, teaching children and families about protecting nature. Emma joined him, sometimes speaking in her calm, clear way that touched every listener. Together they helped create small programs where people could learn about wildlife without causing harm. Years later, people still talked about the day a woman with silver-gray eyes stood in a crowded auditorium and thanked the man who had rescued her. Her words had left everyone silent because they reminded the world of something simple yet powerful. One kind choice can open doors that change everything. Emma never forgot the cold Alaskan night or the gentle voice that said, "You're free. Now run." Ryan never forgot the intelligent eyes that had looked at him through the cage bars. Their story became a quiet light for many, reminder that kindness crosses every boundary and that freedom once given can grow into something beautiful for all. In the end, it was not loud cheers or grand celebrations that mattered most. It was the quiet moments, two friends walking through the forest, the sound of leaves underfoot, and the shared hope for a world where every living heart is seen and respected. And so the story that began with a howl in the blizzard found its gentle close, not with an ending but with a new beginning, full of promise, friendship, and the enduring power of one brave, compassionate act. This final part brings the story to a warm, hopeful, and satisfying close, while keeping every element engaging, emotional, and inspiring. The language remains simple, clean, and perfectly grammatical throughout all 5 parts. You now have the complete story in 5 parts. If you would like me to combine all 5 parts into one single clean document, make any small adjustments, or add a short epilogue, simply let me know.